Welcome back. I'm David Busch, and this is Busch History. This is topic 29, the Clinton years, 1993 to 2001. The Republicans, they had Ronald Reagan as their shooting star. The Democrats, they had Bill Clinton as their shooting star in the latter part of the 20th century. Bill Clinton's popularity is enormous amongst Democrats. And let's take a look today at his administration and see if we can figure out why. One of the things that's important to understand is that Bill Clinton comes to power in 1993. He wins the 1992 election. It was a three-way race in which George Bush was battling his "Read My Lips, no new taxes" statement, and he had to go back on that. And Ross Perot, a Texas millionaire, comes to town and says he's going to clean up Washington, and he takes Republican votes, and you have the young, very polished Bill Clinton, a real professional politician who is going to bring the Democrats back into power. Let's take a look at some general information about Bill Clinton first. He was the first Democratic president to serve 2 full terms since Franklin Roosevelt. That's a long time. Because think about it, Harry Truman didn't serve 2 full terms, he completed Franklin Roosevelt's term. Then John Kennedy was assassinated, certainly not 2 full terms, just 1,000 days. Then we have Lyndon Johnson, 5 years, because he stepped down. He could have been a 10-year president, actually, but he stepped down, didn't run for his second term. Jimmy Carter ran for his second term, it didn't go so well. And then now we have Bill Clinton. In 1992, that election gave the Democrats the legislative branch and the executive branch, and generally if you control both branches, you can get a lot done. It was a three-way race, as I said. Clinton won 370 electoral votes to Bush's 168. Ross Perot got none. So Ross Perot was out there, but he was more of a diversion, and the biggest problem was the "Read My Lips" problem. Here's a look at the electoral map in 1992. You can see George Bush got a significant amount of states, but the states that George Bush got did not have a huge amount of electors. The Clinton campaign got the states with most of the electors, which is why they won the presidency. Some domestic points. One of the first things that Bill Clinton did was sign the Family Leave Act. This is called the Family Medical Leave Act of 1993. And this act had been wanted for a long time. What it basically said was, it basically says is, I should say, is that if you have a personal family emergency, that you can take time off from your job and your job will be there when you return. There are stipulations, certainly, but we're talking about child care, death, taking care of an elderly relative, a personal family, a personal medical problem, whatever it might be, that you cannot lose your job. Now, that just sounds nice. But here's an example of the difference between Democratic ideology and Republican ideology. George Bush thought it was nice too. George Bush just didn't think it should be a federal law. He thought it should be a policy enacted by employers as a nice thing to do. Bill Clinton said, yeah, right, we'll make it a law. And it was the first thing he did when he became president. He also tried to get national health care. He put Hillary in charge of it, and it was an incredibly complicated plan, and it fell flat on its face, so big failure in the early Clinton administration. He wanted to address gays in the military. He wanted to open up the military where gays could openly serve, and he got an awful lot of pushback from Republicans and from conservatives, and frankly from Americans who weren't ready to accept it yet. So instead, he got his "don't ask, don't tell" policy, meaning superiors couldn't ask what your sexual orientation was, and you shouldn't advertise it, which means you're staying in the closet. And the 9 years that are associated with Bill Clinton are the longest economic growth period in American history. And I say 9 years because it went into the first year of the W. Bush administration, being left over from the Clinton's policy, from Bill Clinton's policies. While he was president, more than 22 million jobs were created. If you remember, when Ronald Reagan was president, it was 13 million we thought it was a lot. 22 million while Bill Clinton was president. Home ownership rate increased 3% from 64 to 67.5%. The lowest unemployment rate in 30 years, it hit almost 4%, which is an incredible low unemployment rate. The largest budget deficit, this is the Reagan-Bush deficit in American history, converted to the largest surplus of $200 billion. At the end of the Clinton administration, the biggest argument in the 2000 presidential campaign between Al Gore and George W. Bush is, what do they do with all of this money? There was so much money that the federal government had choices that they'd never had before. Stock market went wild, the 220% increase in the Dow Jones Industrial Act and the Dow Jones Industrials, and the Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act of 1933. It was a tax increase on upper income individuals. The taxes went up. They didn't go sky high, but they went up, and a realignment of federal spending. And he was lucky to be the president when the internet took off, which was why we had such a great economy. A positive trend, like I was just talking about, the Omnibus Reconciliation Act. We had the Brady Handgun Act, which is a mandatory waiting period and background check for purchasing a handgun on the heels of the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, in which his press secretary, James Brady, had been permanently impaired because he was shot in the head. Talked about he increases taxes on the wealthy. He lowered the deficit from $290 billion in 1992, that's what he inherited, to $203 billion by 1994. So he cuts the deficit, check this out, by $87 billion in 2 years. By 1999, we have a $124 billion budget surplus. A $1.5 trillion surplus was projected throughout the beginning of the 21st century, throughout the Bush administration. So it's projected that these policies that were enacted while Bill Clinton was president would continue to show a strong economy and surpluses for years to come, which would hopefully mean paying down the debt. Remember, there's a difference between deficit and debt. Deficit is how much extra money you have to spend each year that you didn't budget for. The debt is each year as you borrow money, the debt increases. So you can have no deficit and still have the debt left over from previous years. And that was the debate. Should we pay down the debt in 2000, or should we give the money back to people? But we'll talk more about that. This is from the Congressional Budget Office. This shows the Clinton years in terms of the deficit. So here's the deficit at the beginning of the Clinton administration. You see the deficit dropping and dropping and dropping. So we get to 1998 and we have a surplus. A surplus means extra money. So we have more money, we have more money, we have crazy more money last full year of the Clinton administration, and we still have more money in 2001. And then we hit the Bush administration, it's W. Bush administration, and we have deficit, huge deficit, not so huge, huger deficit, big deficit again. And yes, we're not going to blame this on George Bush right now. This is not a blame W. Bush fest here. This is simply showing you the difference in the two administrations. Some of this comes as a result of September 11th. Some of this comes as a result of a different economic viewpoint on how the government should run. But nevertheless, you can't take this away. This is why the Democrats have a love fest with Bill Clinton. Similar to why the Republicans had a love fest with Ronald Reagan, except when Ronald Reagan was president, the numbers looked more like this, and when Bill Clinton was president, the numbers certainly looked like this. He increased minimum wage to $5.15 an hour. It might not sound like a lot today, but all of a sudden, all those lower people on the economic food chain are making more money, and they love Bill Clinton because of it. The don't ask, don't tell idea in the military, we talked about that a few minutes ago. Many women were placed in high positions. No jokes, I've heard those jokes. He gave a lot of women jobs in his cabinet. The Attorney General, Janet Reno, first female Attorney General. We have Secretary of Energy, State, Health, Education, and Welfare are other jobs that went to women. So he's trying to empower women. And of course, that meant that a lot of women were going to vote for Bill Clinton. Healthcare fell apart, partly because it was an incredibly complicated plan. I remember watching Hillary Clinton presenting this plan on TV and my eyes glazed over. And I believe in national health care. It works in every other developed nation in the world. I think it could work here, my opinion. Anyway, Hillary Clinton was also a lightning bolt. A lot of the old guard did not want the First Lady doing anything but redecorating the White House. And he made Hillary Clinton a huge part of his White House. And it'll be interesting to see if she ultimately becomes president one day or if her time has actually passed. The internet goes crazy while he is president, and you have all of those internet companies starting up, and of course they are sucking jobs, which is why unemployment is falling through the floor, and we have a record low unemployment rate. Another huge thing that occurred in the early days of his presidency was NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement. And what it really said was that North America is Canada, the United States, and Mexico, in that order, going from the North Pole to the equator. Shouldn't they all trade with each other with no barriers whatsoever? Free trade agreement. So with that, NAFTA took away all kinds of tariffs and restrictions on trade between the three nations. It was thought that Mexico in particular would buy a lot of stuff produced in the United States. It didn't work so well in that respect, because what happened instead was a lot of companies in the United States moved their manufacturing to Mexico, so we could buy a lot of stuff made in Mexico. A friend of mine refers to it as a giant sucking sound going to the south of the United States. Mixed results. It did make for a much more cooperative environment between the three nations. By 2010, Canada and Mexico were the top two purchasers of our exports, and also by 2010, they were second and third largest suppliers of goods to the United States. So it made us a tremendous economic powerhouse, meaning Mexico, the United States, and Canada. In 1996, we're going to have a showdown with Republicans. Republicans had taken Congress in 1994, and we're going to have a showdown. Because what's going to happen is, Bill Clinton wants to increase spending in Medicare, education, the environment, and health care. The Republicans say, no, we don't want to spend money on that stuff. So they put their budget for it, or spending bill for it, I should say, and Clinton vetoed their spending bill. So now we have a problem, because we're not getting this budget in play, and we're not getting a spending bill in play. And that's going to lead to a government shutdown. November to December 1996, the federal government was shut down. Bill Clinton gets on TV, and this is a link to his speech, explaining that because of a disagreement with Congress over a spending bill, the government is going to shut down. In those days, the Speaker of the House was Newt Gingrich, and he went eyeball to eyeball with Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton stared longer. So, 46% of the voters blamed the Republicans, while 27% blamed the Democrats for this. And that simply meant that Bill Clinton's popularity, when this is over, was going to rise, and it did. It doomed the 1996 election for Republicans. The Republicans nominated a good guy, Bob Dole, but they couldn't shake the idea that they'd shut down the government and cause so much pain in the country. In 1995, we have the first huge idea of domestic terrorism in the United States with the Oklahoma City bombing. If you take a look, this is the federal building in Oklahoma City, and a guy by the name of Timothy McVeigh, with help from Terry Nichols, drove a truck up in front of it, walked away, the truck exploded and blew up the building, and it caused 168 people to die, including a lot of children in a daycare facility at the first floor of this. And now is, oh, this stuff can happen here. We're used to having it happen someplace else. The fact that it could happen here was unbelievable by Americans. This is Timothy McVeigh, and these are the covers of Time magazine. And this is a very poignant picture over here of a firefighter carrying a wounded child as a result of the bombing. 1996, as I said, Bill Clinton is re-elected. The only Democrat to win re-election to a second term since FDR, as I said a minute ago. And here is what the Electoral College map looks like in 1996. Not terribly different from the way it looked in 1992. Bill Clinton also wanted to be another Jimmy Carter-like president and bring peace to the Middle East. Didn't have the same level of success, but it was an earnest effort and some progress was made. It was called the Oslo Accords. A series of meetings from 1993 to 1999, all throughout his presidency. They kept on talking, they kept on talking. He believed if they kept on talking, something good would come out of it. And when it's all said and done, what was agreed to is self-rule for the Palestinians in return for the Palestinians recognizing Israel's right to exist. It is still very much a work in progress, but you have to try. His foreign policy debacles occurred in Somalia and in Kosovo. In Somalia, President Bush had sent troops, and there was a Somalian civil war, and President Bush has sent troops into Somalia to function both as peacekeepers and to distribute food to people who were suffering as a result of the civil war. Well, that led to greater American involvement in Somalia, and maybe some of you have seen the Black Hawk Down movie, and it's a little bit about the Battle of Mogadishu. And that occurred in October of 1993, and we were able to see Americans being killed in Somalia simply trying to keep the peace. And it was pretty ugly, and the movie shows it very well, and that was the end of our involvement in Somalia. President Clinton pulls our military presence out of Somalia. One of the biggest regrets I saw recently on a Bill Clinton interview was in Rwanda. There was a genocide going on, there was ethnic cleansing going on, and because of what happened in Somalia and the Americans' distaste for getting involved in more events like this, we did not intervene. And to this day, Bill Clinton, when he's asked about the greatest regret of his presidency, he says that I didn't intervene and try to stop the Rwandan genocide. Then we have the Balkans, and we have Bosnia, Herzegovina, and we have Albania, and we have Croatia, and we have Serbia, and you're thinking, World War I. Yes, this is where World War I began. It was mostly quelled after World War I when these nations were carved up. And World War II left us with the Soviet Union as a superpower, and it kept these nations from fighting with each other. The dissolution of the Soviet Union meant that the old ethnic problems could rise up again, and they surely do. And we have Muslims and Christians fighting in Serbia, in Bosnia, and in Croatia. And President Clinton decides he's going to help the situation. 1992 to 1999, violence raged between the new countries formed by the breakup of what had been Yugoslavia. Clinton helped broker the Dayton Accords to end fighting in Bosnia and Herzegovina. He urged NATO to act against Serbia. The Serb army was forcing ethnic Albanians from the Serbian regions of Kosovo. And we sent in troops again. Not ground troops, we had an air presence in there, and we were using our planes to take pictures of some of the horrors that were going on. And there's a movie about this called Behind Enemy Lines, and we're also using our planes with the sanctioning of the United Nations to help stop some of this ethnic cleansing. There was not a strong feeling that we wanted boots on the ground here. We have a picture of Time magazine and the Balkans as a result of that. And then we have certainly the anguish over Bosnia and the Balkans. What can you do? And you see you have Lyndon Johnson in the background kind of echoing the, do I really want to get involved in this? Is this another Vietnam? And we ultimately did not get involved in it. In Haiti in 1991, there was a military coup, and President Aristide was removed from power. Well, there was a lot of violence going on in Haiti as well. Haiti's very close to the United States because here's Haiti, here's the Dominican Republic, here's Cuba, and up here where the P is would be Florida. So in 1994, Clinton pledged the use of American troops to restore President Aristide to power. So we're going to put him back in power. And what that simply meant was that we were going to stop the violence that was going on in Haiti and install President Aristide back in, and we certainly do that. Let's keep moving forward here. And then we have the impeachment of Bill Clinton. Now it's important to understand that impeachment does not mean removal from office. President Clinton was impeached. He was certainly impeached. He was not removed from office. Impeachment is the stating of charges by the House of Representatives. And then there's a trial in the Senate. And if the Senate finds the president guilty of those charges, he is removed from office and prosecuted for those crimes. Bill Clinton was not found guilty in the Senate. He was not removed from office, but he was impeached. A look at some of the details. The Republicans, once they got in power in Congress, argued with President Clinton. And the strategy, when that occurs, let's dig up dirt about the background of whoever we're arguing with. Well, the dirt started to fly. There had been a real estate scandal in Arkansas on the Whitewater River. It was called White Watergate, and it was investigated as to whether the Clintons were involved in that scandal, that real estate scandal. And nothing was ever proven, but the investigation was still continuing. And then, in the middle of that, a woman by the name of Paula Jones, who had worked in the Arkansas state government, accused Bill Clinton of sexual harassment and forcing himself on her sexually. Jones sued Clinton for sexual harassment while he was governor of Arkansas. So now, the President of the United States is being sued for sexual harassment. That is a big headline unto itself. Information emerged suggesting that Clinton also had an improper relationship with a young White House intern, 21 years old, named Monica Lewinsky. And Monica Lewinsky had indeed worked in the Clinton White House as an intern, and as it turned out, she did have a sexual affair with Bill Clinton. And we know this for fact because she called up a good friend of hers by the name of Linda Tripp. She was a confidant. And she told Linda Tripp on her voicemail, on her answering machine in those days, so it was recorded on a little cassette tape, about how she loved Bill Clinton, and how he loved her back, and how she hoped that one day he would leave Hillary and marry her, and she'd be married to the President of the United States. And then she told Linda Tripp some more. She told Linda Tripp that she and President Clinton had engaged in oral sex in the White House. And that she had Bill Clinton's semen on her blue dress. And then she gave that blue dress to Linda Tripp to keep. An interesting memento to have for the president, don't you think? So nevertheless, all of this starts to come out. White Watergate is out there, Paula Jones is out there, Monica Lewinsky is out there, and now the grand jury wants to talk to the president. So, Bill Clinton is subpoenaed. He's subpoenaed, and while this process is going on, the public wants to know, did Bill Clinton have this adulterous relationship? Because while not illegal, certainly morally wrong. And Bill Clinton gets on TV and he looks us right in the eye. I remember this. He goes, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." And I believed him, because that's who I am. I believe people. Anyway, then he goes and he testifies before the grand jury. Now, he didn't go to the grand jury. It was videoed from the White House, I believe from an office in the White House. I don't remember if it was the Oval Office or not. But he was asked questions about Paula Jones, and he was asked questions about Monica Lewinsky, and in front of the grand jury, in front of the cameras for the grand jury, he said, "I did not have sexual relations. It didn't occur." And Ken Starr, the special prosecutor, had him because he also had the blue dress. And the blue dress had Bill Clinton's semen on it. So Bill Clinton had now perjured himself before a grand jury. And that was why Bill Clinton was put on trial, because he had committed perjury. And the public was really split on this. There was the one side that said, if you can't trust the guy, how can he be your president? Now remember, the 1990s was a wonderful time economically for the United States. It wasn't a bad time socially for the United States either. So this was the big thing. We hadn't had September 11th. We weren't involved in wars. The economy was doing great, so it wasn't like there's a huge deficit. So this is it. This is where we are focused like a laser beam on the president's moral behavior. And one side said the president's morality is his business. It's between him and Hillary. It's not our business. We're all human. The other side said, but, he committed adultery. That's the man's moral fiber. And if you can't trust a man to be true in his relationship, can you trust him as president? And we're back and forth with this debate, back and forth. And it's a hard thing to decide, because things are going well. If things have been going badly, the side that says none of our business might not have felt the same way. Nevertheless, he is going to be put up on articles of impeachment by the House of Representatives, and they're all about 2 counts of lying to the grand jury, and the Senate is going to put him on trial. As a result of this, Chief Justice William Rehnquist is going to be the presiding judge, and when it's all said and done, Bill Clinton is not convicted. He is found innocent. I think, now I'm throwing my opinion in here a little bit, I'm not shy about doing it. I think what it came down to was, while this was wrong, this really was between him and Hillary, and did it put the country in jeopardy? Did it constitute high crimes and misdemeanors? The Senate didn't have a stomach for it, and Bill Clinton survived the whole process. So the end of an era. President Clinton left office with an incredibly high approval rating, 65%, the highest since President Eisenhower. He left office with a decreasing federal debt, a federal budget surplus, low unemployment, and rising GDP. So this is why he is the rock star of the Democratic Party. Nobody says that he was right in the Monica Lewinsky affair. Nobody says that. But they look back at the 1990s as a time when things were really good. September 11th hadn't occurred. We weren't taking off our shoes at airports. The Twin Towers were still there. We weren't so afraid. Yes, there were glitches. There was the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. But we survived it. Not only did we survive it, we prosecuted the people that did it. So, wow, the economy's doing great. Wow, great weight raise. Wow, GDP, wonderful. Wow, internet, wow. All those things are going very well. So that's why today Bill Clinton is such a political asset when people are running for office, because this guy is incredibly popular with Democrats and with liberals. He found a way to make it work and get it done. On the other hand, that moral part of the Republican Party, that ultra-conservative part of the Republican Party, thinks he's a joke and that he got away with a lot as president. You decide for yourself how you feel about it. All I'm telling you is the economy went real well when Bill Clinton was president, and it didn't go that well afterwards. What would have happened if Bill Clinton had to deal with September 11th? How would he have dealt with it? Would things have really gone as well following that? It's very difficult to say. He didn't have that problem, which is why it's always difficult to compare presidencies. You have to compare what the president has to deal with and how he deals with it, not just the presidents themselves. Anyway, going to leave that here right now. Once again, this is topic 29 in Bush History Land. It's on my website, www.bushhistory.net, with a whole set of notes on Bill Clinton as well. Feel free to use them, download them, do what you want with them as long as they help you. Tell your friends, tell your relatives, tell everybody about us. Our subscribers are growing, my subscribers are growing. It's not about how popular the site is, it's how good the information is and whether it's useful to you. Anyway, the next topic will deal with the Bush administration. This is the W. Bush administration. For now, I'm David Bush, and this is Bush History. Have a great day.